Well, Evan, today I really want to talk to you about Google's I/O conference because there is a lot to unpack there. Biggest changes in 25 years is what everybody's saying, and I would agree with them. Uh, Mainly focused around AI, right? They really, really want to push AI search. A lot of people talk about an agentic web and dead internet theory and all those different things. Humans aren't going to be on the internet anymore and all that other stuff. What they're trying to do is they want to give us an assistant, and then they want to control the assistant, right? And that assistant may live on the Google page, similar to kind of how we've seen Google AI overviews kind of jump up at the top for informative inquiries and stuff like that. But up at the top of the page, there may be a bot now that you can access, an AI agent that you can now use to check out, to find things, and stuff like that. And we'll see how the UI evolves as they launch this thing. But it's an interesting idea, right? They want to give us all assistants that find that stuff. But one thing I want to caution everybody on, much like I have been this whole process as things continue to change, is to not make a huge leap, because all the underlying technology that Google is steering this ship at this point, right? They own most of the market. They have 90% of search still. They have the AI side, and then they can force people into the AI funnel from Google search. So they're kind of controlling the narrative, and they've built the underlying technology of the web over the last 25, 30 years. So you don't need to panic, because the existing website architecture you have and your existing web presence is primarily already optimized, right? Like mostly. There are some differences, but I just wanted to caution everybody not to panic or anything during these transitions. And if you work with us, we're always making the transitions for you uh, automatically. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting take that Google has on the future. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, it was. And I would say it actually tells me you should probably panic if you haven't been doing any SEO and you haven't been doing anything to optimize your website, and you don't have a lot of information on there, and you're hoping that just because you are in the area, people are going to find you, because that is going to be less common, I would say, if these changes really take effect the way that Google is portraying them to, because it is more of a, conversational search. So if somebody's having a conversation with Google, instead of just typing in a brief query that is going to return a list of websites that they click on, they're actually having a conversation with Google. Google needs to have enough information to have that conversation back. And if you are not giving Google enough information on your website or on your, Google business profile, for example, then you're not going to be in the discussion that Google is having. But you also most likely didn't have your website shown either. So maybe you wouldn't notice a big of a difference with all of this change in terms of your traffic and phone calls.
Yeah. The activity should still be pretty consistent, because if you're doing SEO, you're doing all that kind of stuff. Your visibility is still increasing, so you're going to be showing up on the AI search more. But it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how they implement it, because historically we almost always see Google go after elephants, and usually that's e-commerce. So I wouldn't be surprised if the first thing that we see is an e-commerce push with their universal cart, when they actually get out there and try and push this, and then a slow trickle down to other areas of the web, as it makes sense. But local is what we care about, and it'll be interesting to see how this affects local, because as you and I have seen, AI search is relevant to local, but most of the conversions are still happening on traditional Google search, whereas the conversion rate on AI search is a lot less, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, and if they can actually improve the conversion rates, frankly, with AI.
Yeah, and it's going to impact the top funnel first, and people getting information. And we've seen that there are industries that have already been affected. We know that, by AI publishers and some of those other information purely providing sort of websites. But local businesses still seeing that bottom funnel high demand traffic, because that is where people are going. I've heard multiple stories now, and maybe it's anecdotal, but I've heard multiple times where people have used ChatGPT to ask a question, find that information, get a recommendation, and then they make sure to go on Google to ensure that that information was good. So even then, it's using that, understanding the entire framework of and the customer journey for how a potential lead, potential visitor gets to either your website or even just your Google business profile. It doesn't always have to be the website. The Google business profile can still generate a lot of phone calls and, traffic to your website too, of course, but they can generate phone calls on their own also. So, and that's been around for a while. It's not like that's a brand new thing either. So it's just understanding that Google hasn't been 10 blue links in 20 years, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
so,
It keeps changing, and every time it does, somebody freaks out. But well, I mean, the local side is, like I said, and like you said, is where it's at, and commercial intent, specifically commercial local intent, right? Like our local commercial intent, and that is where we live, right? In this space is local commercial local intent. So, we don't really care if somebody's typing in something like, what is a hearing aid, right? Like that's so high funnel that we don't care. But one of the things that AI search and the AI features on Google have done is they have focused the traffic. So some traffic has been removed. If you had a blog before that was talking about hearing aids and cognitive decline, you're probably not getting as much traffic from it all over the country anymore like you used to. But the people that are in your area that are searching for hearing aids or a provider of some kind are still converting there, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they change the local funnel. But my guess is, and this is truly a guess, but my guess is that will be something that they don't touch right away. They probably will touch e-commerce and some other things that might be easier to implement first, but we will see. It'll be interesting.